Okay, thank you everyone for joining today's webinar on the Equity Workforce Training Equipment and Infrastructure Grants RFP. As I said, for those of you coming in, uh, please self-mute yourself. If you're so willing, put your name, your organization, and your contact info in the chat so that we can reach out to you in the future. And as well, we often see partnerships form out of these webinars and the open office hours that we'll be talking about later. So really quickly, I am Edward Shea. I'm the Program Director for Adult Training and MWBE Support for MassCEC. I will quickly pass over to my teammates to introduce themselves. Janelle?
Hello, I'm Janelle Granum. I am the program director here at MassCEC, and I will turn it over to Bethany.
Hi, I'm Bethany. I'm a Workforce and Environmental Justice Fellow. I'll turn it over to Anitra.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anitra Ford, and I'm a program manager with the Workforce and Equity team here at MassCEC, and I'll pass it on to Ben.
Thank you, Anitra. Ben Christensen, program manager on the Workforce Equity team here at MassCEC, and I'll pass it to Camilla.
Hi, everyone, and I apologize for being off camera. I'm having some technical difficulties, but I wanted to be here today. I'm Camilla Bacolod, and I'm the program coordinator for the Workforce Equity programs. And I'll pass it to our newest team member, Heather.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Camilla. I'm a new team member, program manager on the Workforce Equity team, and I'll pass it on to Raya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raya Weisenen. I'm the Deputy Managing Director of Workforce Development here at MassCEC. And checking our team, I'll pass it to Cassia.
Hi, sorry, I'm Cassia, also off camera, but I'm a program administrator on the Workforce Development team, working primarily on the internships program.
Okay, I think that's everyone from our team that's on today. Thank you all for your quick intros. Can we go to the next slide, please? So here's a quick look at what we'll be going over today for the RFP. We'll be talking about the various target occupation populations, eligibility requirements, where the funding is coming from. We'll have a brief Q&A at that point to talk about those eligibility requirements and other information. Then we're going to go directly over the actual details of the RFPs and sort of what you should be looking for as you're applying. And then we'll have a final round of Q&A. We're going to ask that you please put into the chat your questions because this is a recorded session. We're not going to do as much interactive Q&A. It's more of a call a response. We do have open office hours that we will be referring to later, which will be the best time for you to come in and talk about concepts and ask more detailed questions. So moving on to the next slide. So MassCEC's mandate is to increase the clean energy sector. We do investments, but we also have a mandate to do so in an equitable and inclusive manner. We have these RFPs open, focused on specific target populations due to the funding source, which we'll talk about in a moment. In particular, this RFP requires that the participants being served be either from one of these 4 possible populations. Those individuals residing in environmental justice neighborhoods, members of federally recognized or state acknowledged tribes, members of other underrepresented communities in the clean energy sector, which is a way of kind of capturing a broader swath of individuals. And then finally, current or former fossil fuel workers. So moving on. MassCEC views our work focused on 4 areas. So net zero grid, which includes solar and microgrids, high performance building, which includes retrofitting, weatherization, and other electrification of buildings, offshore wind, which obviously is always big in the news lately, and then finally transportation, which includes electric vehicles, electrification of shipping, and e-bikes. If you want to read more about those sectors and the occupations, and then you can look at page 7 of the actual RFP solicitation. So next slide. Some examples of those occupations. If you actually look on the MassCEC website on the front page, there's a needs assessment the workforce needs assessment, which has a breakdown of the top priorities in the workforce right now. But here are some quick examples. Electricians and solar installers are one of the highest needs in the state. And just to be clear, solar installers do have to be licensed electricians. There are ancillary jobs that could potentially be considered around that. HVAC technicians, construction trades, but we also want to call out the customer service rep. So we're not only looking at the technical jobs, we're also looking at the support jobs that are important in the clean energy sector. So moving on. So real quickly, here's a quick overview, which I think I'm passing over to Ben.
Thank you, Edward. So this is just an overview of our current funding opportunities. Today, we are looking at the middle blue box, which is the Equity Workforce Training Equipment and Infrastructure solicitation. We will have a webinar tomorrow for the MWBE support, which is on the bottom right box. That solicitation has a new strand that I just wanted to call out that we'll be looking for applicants that are interested in growing the capacity for our MWBE ecosystem around access to capital. So if you are able, there's information on our website, but that webinar will be tomorrow. And then on the left in the green box is our climate critical workforce training equipment and infrastructure solicitation. We will be having a informational webinar for that on Thursday. All of that information is available on our website, and you can click on the QR codes for more information. Next slide, please. So the current funding stream for this grant is funded firstly through our Act Creating a Next Generation Roadmap for Climate Policy. So this act was enacted in 2021 and set aside $12 million annually to enable MassCEC to expand its workforce development efforts and support individuals living in economic justice neighborhoods, minority women-owned business enterprises in the clean energy sector, and fossil fuel workers transitioning into the clean energy sector. The law was expanded in 2022 to also recognize members of federally recognized and state acknowledged tribes, as well as other populations underrepresented in the clean energy sector. Next slide, please. We also have funding available under this solicitation from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, of 2021. This funding stream will be utilized for our third funding strand, which is focused on equipment and infrastructure. There are some additional contract requirements for this federal funding stream, and that we would go through post-award, and then also be aware that we would expect that all awarded projects be spent down by December 31st, 2025. Next slide, please. So who's eligible to apply? Partnerships are strongly encouraged and would be looked upon more favorably by our review teams, especially if you can show the range of expertise that all of the partners are providing to the application. The types of entities that are eligible to serve as a lead applicant are community-based organizations, educational institutions, for-profit entities, workforce development organizations, mass hire, workforce, and investment boards. For the lead applicant, we're pretty agnostic on who is lead applicant, but just they would be the ones that would be responsible for invoicing and administrative oversight of the award. And more information on that can be found on page 8 of the RFP. Next slide, please. So it's just a kind of graphical representation of what I just discussed, that takes many different partners with a lot of different expertise for large-scale training and implementation workforce development programs to be successful. So leaning on those that have certain specific expertise for education or support services, whoever is determined to be the lead applicant, again, just be aware that they would be the ones responsible for the contracting process and also for invoicing and administrative oversight. Next slide, please. This will be our first pause for Q&A. Do we have any questions from the chat that would like to be highlighted?
Yes, you had two questions. Do you only fund workforce development for training jobs in the primary occupations, and at the time it's what you had on the last slide?
So yeah, so we do have our legislated core focus areas. Those again being high performance buildings, smart grid, clean transportation, and offshore wind. So occupations, in your proposal, you would need to justify that those occupations that you'd be training for would fall under one or more of those four categories.
Can a joint apprenticeship training fund be a lead applicant?
So long as the JAT, the Joint Apprenticeship Training Fund has staff or a physical location in Massachusetts and can produce a certificate of good standing from the Department of Revenue, they are eligible to apply, yes. And to put a kind of finer point on what Ben said earlier about the occupations, again, if you go look at the needs assessment that's on the website, there's a much longer list of occupations, but they have to be within those four sectors that Ben mentioned.
Thank you. So I think we'll move on to the next slide and go through our general application.
I missed one question. How many grants
okay.
of this type will be distributed?
This is
So
a competitive.
Go ahead.
This is a competitive round of funding, so it's based on the merit of the applications. You know, we do have a finite amount of funding available, so it's not a specific number. It's based on the applications that we receive, the amount of funds that we have available.
Okay, sorry, that's it for real.
Great, thank you, Janelle. So moving on to our general application process, and I'll be passing it over to Camilla.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ben. So I will go over the general application process for the Equity Workforce Training Grant. So next slide, please. So the first step is to review the RFP and all the different forms and attachments which can be found on our website to understand the opportunity, requirements, and the objectives of this grant. And the next step would be to attend the informational webinar as you are doing right now and use other resources offered, such as office hours, which we will talk about in more detail later during this presentation. And you can reach out to our team if you have any questions or you want to discuss your ideas via email at rfpworkforce@masscet.com. And applications will be due by May 1st by 11:59 p.m. Submitting all the required forms and attachments, again, to rfpworkforce@masscet.com. And next slide, please. So the required documents for the application packet includes the signature and acceptance form, the application form itself, a budget in an Excel format, and our application packet also includes a sample agreement for your own reference. And we will only accept applications using our pre-formatted documents. And I also want to note that additional attachments will not be considered during review and scoring to ensure an equitable review process. And for the applications, at least 2 MOUs or letters of support from employer partners must be submitted to attachment to the application form or as separate documents. Next slide, please. So again, our applications are due by May 1st. We do have pre-application office hours if you want to ask questions or you want to share your ideas on the specific program that you're proposing. It's also a good opportunity for you to network with other organizations in this ecosystem. So our pre-application office hours are listed here and it will be up on our website. You can register for the meeting. It will be in 1 hour blocks and you can drop in anytime during that 1 hour block. Next slide, please. So we are open to ideas that promote diverse pipelines to these climate critical occupations. If your proposal makes a compelling case as to how a certain training program will increase workers with in-demand skills. An example would be if you propose a program that creates pathways for sales representatives to become weatherization analysts through an appropriate training program. Again, we are open to discussing your ideas if you have any unique approaches to developing a training program to these climate critical fields. Next slide, please. All STRAND applications will be reviewed based upon the selection criteria, which includes the experience and qualifications of the lead applicants and the partners. We also review it based on the occupations and populations that you're targeting and the type of employer engagement that you're using throughout the program implementation process, and that your proposal has strong outcomes and signals sustainability with a reasonable budget and leveraging resources beyond this grant. And we will also consider the diversity in occupations, geography, and the unique approach to the training program. Next slide, please. We do have different strands under this RFP that has different award durations and award range. So that is Strand A, Career Pathway Training, Strand B, Clean Energy Career Awareness, and Strand C, Equipment and Infrastructure. My colleagues and I will discuss in more detail about these different strands. I just want to note that for Strand C, Equipment and Infrastructure, new applicants must also submit a submission of Strand A if you're not an existing grantee. But for current workforce equity grantees, you can submit Strand C only. And another note is that we are expecting separate application packets for each strand. So I just want to note that if you are interested in applying to multiple strands. And next slide, please. Okay, now I will pass it off to my colleague Anitra to speak more about Strand A.
Thanks, Camilla. We can go ahead and get started with the next slide. So Strand A, the career pathway training leading to employment in climate critical priority occupations, has an award range from $200,000 to $1,200,000. The award duration would go anywhere from 1 year to 3 years. And please note that an additional year of post-program monitoring and metric tracking will be required after the proposed project is complete. So you should make sure that you plan for that when setting up your budget. For Strand A, match is not required, but encouraged. We are going to be looking for a comprehensive training plan that results in our industry recognized credential, a program that includes wraparound support services and case management, and placement support into a clean energy occupation. Next slide. For program design, more information on this can be found on page 15. Again, we're looking for comprehensive training plans with strong vocational and work readiness curricula, training delivery models that embrace innovative and proven strategies to increase participant success, a program design that includes case management and support services, a program that leverages partnerships and resources from relevant stakeholders and additional funding. And then I think the last one that I would like to promote here is that one that demonstrates commitment to increase access to EJ in disadvantaged communities. Next slide. For outcomes in Strand A, we will be looking for milestones that indicate successful completion for individual participant off-ramps, attainment of an industry recognized credential, case management, placement into clean energy occupation, job retention, and increased wages for incumbent workers. And description of plans to engage relevant partners to provide off-ramps to participants. So your stakeholder engagement or employer partnerships are going to be really important here. Next slide. So here's an example of a traditional pipeline. As you can see, we've got 3 lanes that are moving simultaneously. Your employer engagement will start beyond your program implementation phase and then continue throughout. And then your program implementation phase will also take place kind of at the same time as your wraparound support services. So we do understand that there are going to be different roles that are performed by different CBO partnerships and things like that. But as a lead applicant, the expectation is that you would be managing all 3 of these lanes simultaneously. Next slide. And for Strand B, I will be passing it on to Ben.
Thank you, Anitra. So I'll be speaking more about Strand B. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So Strand B is our clean energy career awareness, exploration, navigation, preparedness strand. The award range is $50,000 to $600,000. Award duration is 1 to 3 years. Match is not required. What we are looking for in applications for this strand are clear and thoughtful range of exposures and career pathway options for participants. That you have clearly defined access to next steps that lead to off-ramps, either into training, employment in clean energy, internships, post-secondary education are all examples of the types of off-ramps that we'd be looking for. And throughout the programming, that there are wraparound support services and case management being offered to participants to meet their needs, to promote completion, retention, and advancement. As far as the award duration, similar to Strand A, that there is that additional year of post-program monitoring and tracking. So please take that into consideration as you're developing your program design and your budget. Next slide, please. So Strand B also has additional selection criteria callouts, which we found on page 15 of the RFP. We would be looking for applications that present a comprehensive program design that incorporates best practices for the target population. Clear and thoughtful range of exposures. As mentioned, these off-ramps, that your delivery models embrace innovative and proven strategies to increase participant success. And probably most importantly, that the design includes the case management support services tailored to meet the participant needs and your target population to promote that successful completion and referrals to off-ramps or direct employment. Next slide, please. So again, just to stress further that the importance of clearly defined milestones that indicate successful completion, what these might look like for a career exploration program. Those could be submission of a specific exploration project for students, attainment of an internship opportunity, enrollment in a training program in clean energy, admission and matriculation into a post-secondary institution, or placement into a clean energy occupation. So descriptions of plans to engage relevant partners and to provide these off-ramps. So we would like to see that you have connections with training providers and employers that your participants could be referred to once they complete your programming. And then also that your application includes letters of support or MOUs from at least 2 partners that would be offering these off-ramps to participants. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'll be passing it now back to Camilla to talk a little bit more about Strand C and infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So we can move forward with the next slide. So Strand C equipment and infrastructure to support climate critical training provides funding for equipment used by training participants and infrastructure that needs to be built to host a training program. So the award range for this strand is $50,000 up to $750,000 with a duration of 1 year to 18-month award. Again, Strand C proposals must be submitted with a Strand A career pathway training proposal, or you must be you must have received an equity workforce grant award to apply for Strand C. Match is not recommended, but match is recommended, but not required. And Massey EC is required to expand these funds since they're expended from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, of 2021 prior to December 31st of 2026. So if awarded, we require that contracts for these funds will end by December 31st, 2025. And next slide, please. Applications for Strand C, equipment and infrastructure strand, will be reviewed through additional selection criteria according to the impact that the added equipment and infrastructure will have on your training program. And this includes the outcomes of expanded training offerings that allows more students to participate and enroll in the training program that will lead to the addition or improvement of those in-demand climate critical skills. And next slide, please. In the application, our reviewers will look for detailed description of how the equipment and infrastructure funding will build that added capacity for your program. We considered competitive applications that propose equipment and infrastructure that are vital to sustain or expand a training program. So an example would be purchasing a blower door to set up a program that can train weatherization professionals, and that can be used beyond one cohort of trainees. So it will impact a lot more trainees given the investment in the equipment and infrastructure. Okay, and next slide, please. So that is an overview of all the different strands in this RFP. If you have any further questions or again want to meet our team to discuss your ideas, we have upcoming office hours where you can register via Zoom. And if you also want to be added to our networking list, you can drop your name, organization, and contact information in the chat. And we will sign you up on our partnership list that will be posted on our website. Okay, moving forward, I think we have our second round of Q&A.
If there are any questions from the attendees, please put them in the chat. So while we're waiting to see if anyone has any questions that have come up, there was one question about the multi-strands and how to apply. So as was mentioned, I think by Camilla and our other colleagues, if you're submitting for more than one strand, we view that as multiple separate applications, and we advise you to submit separate forms for each to allow us to score each on its own merit. Do we have any other questions? We have space. Oh, there's one. Constraint C be used as expansion of existing programming. So as mentioned, we do encourage existing equity grantees to apply to Strand C. New applicants who have not received Mass CEC equity workforce funding will have to submit, in addition to the Strand C application, a separate application to Strand A to be eligible for the Strand C funding. But the short answer is yes, Strand C can be used to expand existing training programming. However, we will be judging on the impact of that expansion, whether it's commensurate with the amount requested. Do you have any other questions from the crowd? We have time for 2 or 3 more at this point. So I see one clarification of the answer I just gave, and then I see another new question. So if you're expanding existing program that's already funded under Mass CEC funds, you do not need to submit an additional Strand A application. You simply can submit an application to only Strand C. However, in the Strand C application, you do have to fully explicate in the impact and the program plan how that expansion will impact your existing training program, what the expansion, whether that's in the number of students or addition of new curriculum that will increase and improve the outcomes for those participants, or some other form of improvement of the program. And that will be the basis of judgment for the scoring. So I see a question about exploration grants. Can you actually, can you expand that question a little bit? Are you looking, can you provide what angle you're looking for there in terms of the outcomes or the type of programming that we would accept on there? Can you do a follow-up to that question just so we can give a more pointed answer? Yes, Strand B is for career exploration programming, but I guess the question is, are you looking for an example? Is that the sort of gist of the question?
Yes.
Okay. So a career exploration program can take many different forms. So it basically, we have recognized through our needs assessment and other research that one of the barriers faced by the clean energy sector in general is the lack of awareness of the opportunity in the sector. And some of the opportunity is, for example, there are many occupations in high demand that are trades occupations like construction labor, electricians, and there is existing training for that to some degree. However, individuals who are already in those occupations or looking to get into those occupations do not understand how to increase their opportunities by working on clean energy relevant projects like building electrification, and other sort of projects like that. So a career awareness exploration program would be something that could start at various stages. Some of them are youth, young adult oriented, for example, where they give perspective to those individuals in those ranges about the types of training that they would have to do and the types of jobs they would be potentially able to get after that training. And that would be an example of an awareness. So that could take many forms, such as tours, meeting with workers already in the sector, internships. The big key takeaway that we were hoping that you all would take away today, though, is that regardless of the pathway that you set up for career exploration, that the endpoint does have to have a very clear off ramp. So we need to see outcomes at the tail end in terms of, you know, after they do the awareness and exploration, whatever form that takes, that there is a clear point of connection that the grantee gives to the participant. For example, helping them apply for and get into a pre-apprenticeship, or helping them apply for and get into an internship, or even if you know, we're working with more experienced workers, like already trained individuals in the trade, helping them find a job at a clean energy focused company, for example. So hopefully that helps you with Strand B. So I see another question. So can funds be used for this year, 2024, or next year? So these are fiscal year 24 funds. However, the grants are obviously multi-year. So we are expending funds that have been delegated to Mass CEC for fiscal year 24. So the awards will be made. If you look at the RFP, the deadline is May 1st. We'll be making notices sometime in June, and then post-contracting, most likely the funds would be available late June into the early part of July. Thanks. So I think we can field, we still have time since we have a little bit of a window and we moved fairly quickly. We can field one more question and then go from there, and hopefully you all have the info you need to start your applications. And as mentioned by all my colleagues, we have multiple office hours. During those open office hours, there is more space to talk specifically about concepts and to talk about applications. Do we have one more question? I see some calls for partnerships in the chat, which we love. Generally speaking, I will tell the crowd that the applicants who succeed tend to come in with very strong partnerships. So if you are looking for partners, make sure your email or your contact info is in the chat, and we will create those spreadsheets that all of you can access and reach out and talk to each other about forming partnerships. I would also advise everyone on the call to check out the RFP websites. If you scroll to the bottom of each RFP landing page, there's a list of existing grantees and their project descriptions. And if you reach out to those groups, many of those groups are very interested in additional partners as well. Okay, last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for the day. I think I actually pass it back to Camilla to talk about some additional
Sorry, Edward.
opportunities.
A
Yes.
question snuck in.
I see it. Thank you, Janelle. So, you know, we are a state agency, so we particularly look at the Secretary of State's corporate database. Generally speaking, we look for a certificate of good standing with the state, which generally means that you're paying taxes to the Department of Revenue for the state. So if you're able to produce a COGS, that would be the primary way of us telling that you're eligible from a fiscal responsibility standpoint in the state. If you do not have a COGS available, which usually means that you've been paying for taxes as a corporation and stay for at least a year. Or if you're not a public entity, which do not have to produce COGS, so publicly funded entities like vocational technical schools, the community colleges. If you're not one of those entities, I would advise you to seek out a locally based partner, like another organization, a CBO, or even a private corporation that would be eligible to produce a COGS. Okay. Unless there are any other questions, I'm going to pass it back to Camilla to close us out for the day.
Okay, thanks, Edward. We're going to talk about additional funding opportunities that Mass CEC's Workforce Development Department offers. Next slide. So another opportunity is our Clean Energy Internship Program, where you can apply as an employer to hire an intern, and you can get reimbursed for paying the intern's wages. So the internship program for the summer session is open right now. Mass CEC reimburses for 12 weeks of an intern's work, up to $18 per hour, or up to $640 per intern for the summer session. It's a good way to potentially hire full-time employees through this program. And even if you're not a clean energy employer, but you have a specific clean energy related project that an intern can work on, you can still be eligible for this program. So you can scan the QR code up on the slide here for more information. And the next opportunity is our Technical Trades and Learning Program. So this is a similar internship program for vocational high school after dark CTI students. And participants of other Mass CEC approved programs are eligible to participate, and they can receive valuable paid on-the-job training and work experience. Employers can also receive reimbursement for wages for up to $8,640 per participant. So you can find more information by scanning the QR code here. And yeah, you can also reach out to internships@masscec.com if you have any other questions about those programs. And another webinar that we want to highlight is our Climate Critical Workforce Training, Equipment, and Infrastructure Grants webinar, which is similar to this funding opportunity, but is open to all Massachusetts residents. If you're interested in training Massachusetts residents with career pathway training or incumbent workers with upskilling, this funding opportunity also includes ARPA funds for equipment and infrastructure. For this Climate Critical Workforce Training opportunity, match is required. So if you want to learn about this opportunity, our webinar is this Thursday, March 14th at 1 p.m. So you can scan the QR code to register. And it is the same deadline as this funding opportunity as well, on May 1st, 2024. Okay. Yeah, that is it for this RFP and our other funding opportunities. Again, you can send questions to rfpworkforce@masscec.com, and our team will get back to you as soon as possible. So thank you all for attending this webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future.